And we're going to see if we can answer the questions with the Bible. And if we can't answer the question with the Bible, then we got a problem, right? We have to say, okay, this is something we got to figure out. But if we can at the end say, you know what, the Bible really does take care of these gigantic subjects, these big questions we have, then we can conclude that the Bible is a good source of history and science and a good guide to the history of the world. But we'll start with dinosaur questions. Okay. Tricky question. How many species are here on the screen? Well, those are some of the ceratopsid dinosaurs. It's not all of them. I mean, Microceratops is not there, Protoceratops is not there. It's just some of the ceratopsid dinosaurs. But look at them, they're all similar, right? They have a frill, they have a beak, they have some horns. Their bodies, shapes are the same. They're a lot of different sizes, but the body shapes are about the same. How do we know how many species are there? Well, that's a difficult question. You see, I'm a biologist. And as a biologist, how do I define what two species are? I say if two things can interbreed, they're the same species. How many species are here on the screen? That is the world's largest dog standing next to the world's smallest dog. One species. One definable known species. Now, they might have some problems interbreeding just because, we'll go there. But that is one species. In fact, genetically, these two animals are gray wolves. We know all domestic dogs came from the Middle East a few thousand years ago, and they were bred from gray wolves. Not red wolves, but gray wolves. We know that now. That's really interesting. But look at the amazing diversity in this group. Now, when we look at a group of dinosaurs, we say, how many species are there? I have no idea. If a paleontologist found bones of these animals in the fossil record, there's no way they'd put them in the same species. The reason being that Charles Darwin taught us that species change very slowly over millions of years. And actually, species change very rapidly over dozens to hundreds of years in controlled breeding experiments. Darwin's model actually does not fit reality. If we take this idea that you get a lot of diversity within species, and we look in the fossil record, I know that there are examples of species that look very, very similar in the fossil record, and geologists give them different species names, maybe even different genus names, because they're in different layers, or found on different continents. But they look identical, or some of them very close to identical, and yet that much diversity in one. I want to introduce you to a concept here. Let's get the timing here. There we go. If we look in the fossil record, there's only about 50 basic kinds of dinosaurs. In fact, it's not hard to get a pretty good grasp on all the major groups of dinosaurs. Only about 50 of them. We've got the ankylosaurs, little tanks, and the duck-billed hadrosaurs. You got the stegosaurs and the ceratopsids, the long sauropods, and then the challenge for us, the theropods. That's the T-Rex, the velociraptor, the guys with the little front legs and the big jaws. Anything out front? The theropods. Well, hold on to that 50 number, because we're going to use that again in a little while. Next question. What did dinosaurs eat? Okay, let me ask you another question then. How many of you have seen a dinosaur eat? Oh, okay, so we don't know what they ate, do we? Okay, how does a scientist infer what a dinosaur ate? Teeth shape? Whether or not their eyes are on the sides, like an herbivore who's usually being predated upon, or the front, which would usually be a carnivore who's eating other animals. That's another example, another thing. But you know what? We actually don't know. But we got to be careful, because science changes. Science changes fast. And there's a lot of examples that I know of something I thought was once true and is no longer true, like this one. These theropods are a problem, because we thought for a long time that all the theropods were meat eaters. They got those big back legs for running, those big jumping jaws. Yeah, but see, paleontology has gotten more sophisticated over the last 10, 15 years. What they've realized is when they find bones in the rocks, they used to chisel the bone out, bring it back to the museum, and set it up, right? We've seen those things, but now they look at it and say, wait a minute, they take the whole rock. Because very often associated with dinosaur bones were what are called ghost fossils. That is, you can see an outline of the animal's body. And it has stained the rock a certain color. So you know what the animal was shaped like, because you can see where he used to be. That means he was buried alive, by the way. Very often you can see impressions and colorations, and sometimes preserved heart, liver, stomachs. And when they started sectioning dinosaur stomachs and looking inside them, lo and behold, most of the theropods are packed with plant materials. So, what did most theropods eat? Plants. But wait, they got those pointy teeth. Okay. What do black bears eat? Yeah, plants, right? They're like 99% of their diet is plant material. What do polar bears eat? Seals. Like 99% of a polar bear's diet is meat. What do brown bears eat? Whatever they want. Brown bears they eat everything. They eat mostly plants, but they do eat salmon during a salmon run, a small game when they can catch it. But all three of those species are bears. Same claws. Same nose, same eyes. You see, as two bears came off of Noah's Ark and started radiating around the world, spreading out and getting to small populations and inbreeding and things like that, you got some slight changes happening in these bear populations. One of them got big and turned white, one of them got big and was brown, one of them got a little smaller and was black. Okay, big deal. There's hardly any change there. But those claws that are really good for digging up roots are also really good for grabbing a seal. This is an idea, you've heard the idea adaptation, right? This is an idea called exaptation. It's a species using a tool it was given initially for something it wasn't initially designed for. I mean, you could use a shovel as a hammer. Might not be a very good hammer, but you could do it. But bears use those claws for lots of things. Well, dinosaurs too. Going back to dinosaurs now. These guys, most of them ate plants. Some of them ate meat. I believe it's because the way they're designed allowed them to eat meat later, not initially. We'll get into more of that, especially in the second talk. But we might ask, what happened to the dinosaurs? Right? Were dinosaurs created with Adam and Eve? We're in the Garden of Eden. Were they on Noah's Ark? If they're on Noah's Ark, where are they today? Well, I tell you what. Every large land animal, all the largest examples of animals we have are extinct. The 6-foot-tall penguins are not here anymore. The giant bears, the giant beavers, the armadillos are as big as a Volkswagen. We know they existed from the fossil record, and they're all extinct. Why? Because larger animals are always at a greater threat of extinction. If you have to get big before you reproduce, you're more likely to die before you reproduce. And that's a problem. So mathematically, small species are always at an advantage. Mice will never go extinct. Rabbits will never go extinct. Elephants probably will. Because of the ecological pressures. So therefore, what happened to dinosaurs? Well, actually, I think mathematics happened to them. In this world today, there's not a lot of food. Pine trees are not food, by the way. Oak trees are there's not a lot of food in an oak tree. The world before the flood was very different than the world today. Ecologically, it's very different. This world cannot support gigantic herbivores. If you can't support gigantic herbivores, how can you support gigantic carnivores? Fair enough? Now, there's a lot of open-ended things I'm throwing out there. I'm not answering all the questions, just because it's kind of fun just to walk through this. And let's go to the next one here. Okay. However, if the Bible is actually an accurate history, and we know that dinosaurs did exist, there's no doubt about that. We have their bones, you can assemble their bones, we know they existed. If the Bible is true about the history, then dinosaurs would have had to have lived with man. That is a truth. Now, is it true or not? I don't know, but if those two things are true, that has to be true. So, if dinosaurs lived with man, what kind of evidence would you expect? Well, how about this one? This is very strange. You see, all major world cultures have stories of big lizards. Not giant wolves, big lizards. Now, most of the lizards that you have seen are not big. The dragon stories that come from England and Europe, they never saw an alligator or a crocodile. Small lizards, and yet they've got stories of really big lizards. Where do people get the idea that really big lizards existed? Not from small lizards. because they saw really big lizards. In fact, if you look at history, not Middle Ages and beyond, the dinosaur stories, the dragon stories get really ridiculous. Like all sorts of magic spells. Forget that. The early accounts, thousands of them from all over the world. We know what these things look like, how they behaved, what they ate, and where they lived. We have more information about what are called dragons than any other animal, including horses, which are a lot more important for history. We have no idea where horses came from. They just appeared. And this is a tomb of a bishop who was buried in the floor of Carlisle Cathedral 600 years ago. Now, if dinosaurs weren't discovered into the 1800s, certainly in the 1400s, you cannot have any pictures of dinosaurs because we didn't know they existed yet, right? Well, there's that square, that rectangle that goes around this tomb. There are all these animals carved in it. Follow me here. Does anyone disagree with me? That's a bat. That's a dog. There's a fish and there's a bird. Does anyone disagree with that? In fact, these are pretty specific looking animals too. That's a pretty specific looking dog. That's not a poodle. That fish, I don't know what kind of fish it is, but I bet that's a common fish in England. So these things are true, and yet right next to it, what looks like two sauropod dinosaurs with their necks wrapped around each other. And the one on the left has spikes on his tail. There's only one sauropod dinosaur that we have ever discovered that has spikes on his tail. Ooh, that's strange. And nearby to that is this thing. Now, I don't know what that is. It's not a pig, though. That looks like a stegosaur without plates on his back. Now, remember the first picture I showed you of all the ceratopsids? They all looked a little bit different. We don't have a lot of stegosaur fossils. We don't have a lot at all. And since we know that within each group of dinosaurs there's lots of diversity, it would not at all surprise me if one day we discovered a stegosaur without those famous plates. And yet that looks like a picture of one. And yet, when we look around in history, this theme of two dragons with their necks wrapped around each other is really common. In fact, proportionally, these guys look like Tanystropheus, a known species of dinosaur that was shaped very much like that. This is really intriguing. If you're going to make up a mythological animal, what would it look like? The smog monster? Would you be able to make something up mythologically that actually looked like something in history? Now, granted, there's a lot of distortion in some of this stuff, but this is really curious. All right, next question for you. Was there actually an age of dinosaurs? Was there? And how do you know? Because we were all taught it in school. You've seen pictures like this. Look, there's dinosaurs. There's no birds. There's no mammals. There's no grass. See, for a long time, evolutionists taught that grass didn't evolve until very recently. You know, grass that basically covers the world today. Didn't evolve until recently. But it was really funny, another turn of events. They started looking at dinosaur dung. Now, how many of you ever walked out in your backyard and tripped over a fossilized cow patty? That stuff doesn't last very long, does it? No, not at all. Not at all. And yet we have thousands upon thousands of fossilized dinosaur dung piles. We know what species some of these came from. And when you actually look inside them, and they're rocks, right? They don't smell anymore. When you look inside, you can see what they're eating. Some of them have crunched up bones. We know that dinosaur was a carnivore. Some of them have grass. In fact, all the major families of grasses are in dinosaur dung, and yet they're not in the rocks the dinosaurs are buried in. See, the fossil record is fickle. Some things get preserved, some things don't. And all of us, evolution and creation, doesn't matter. We're looking at a very imperfect record. And it makes paleontology really difficult. And so a lot of what we see, walking with dinosaurs and all that kind of stuff, a lot of that is imagination. Especially when they forgot to cover their ground with grass. But now they know better. So I'm going to try to knock this whole picture down one piece at a time. First of all, I remember being a young man. I remember being fully convinced that evolution was true. I remember the first time someone ever tried to share the gospel with me. Basically, I went over this girl's house that I liked, and her mom was like, "Who's this boy that my daughter just invited over?" And we ended up staying up till 2 o'clock in the morning, talking about the Bible. Now, it's the first time anyone presented anything. The first time I ever heard anyone try to defend the Bible. I thought this lady was crazy. And I said, oh, come on, evolution is a fact. How could anyone doubt it? We evolved from monkeys 6 million years ago in Africa. Come on, lady. Adam and Eve. And I remember seeing stuff like this from 1999. Now, in 1999, I'd already kind of like jettisoned evolution as an explanation in my head. But when this came out, I remember looking at this, and this is profound, because look at this. Is this not true? Is that not a family tree of all the dinosaurs going all the way back to a common ancestor? And does that not prove evolution? Actually, no. Because if you cover up everything they're guessing at, there's 50 family sticks. You've heard the phrase missing link, right? Between man and monkeys? Well, there are missing links between almost every group of animal and almost every other group of animal throughout the entire fossil record. This was known in Darwin's time. He appealed to the future generations of geologists that would uncover what he called the innumerable transitional forms that must exist. And today we have a handful. But the handful we have today were not being used 20 years ago. Those all have been jettisoned. And the ones they're using 20, 30 years ago, they weren't using in the 1920s. Those were all jettisoned. And the one they're using in the 20s, they weren't using in Darwin's day, because the ones that Darwin's have, those have all been jettisoned. The average lifespan of a transitional fossil is about 10 years. Before someone says, you know what, that doesn't really work, and they push it off to the side. So are there any true transitional fossils? All the ones used before 10 years ago were rejected. The ones today, I predict they will also eventually be rejected. Just watch. And yet buried with dinosaurs are a tremendous number of mammals. This was unknown until a short time ago, but look, they've discovered it looks like a Mesozoic flying squirrel. Now, he's not a modern flying squirrel. It's called a multituberculate. Their teeth have got little bumps all over them, tubercles. So a lot of the ancient mammals were tuberculous for some reason. And so this thing, ecologically, had the same ecology as a modern flying squirrel. Wow, that's weird. Well, this next one here, that jawbone, that's from a platypus. As in a platypus, not a transitional platypus. The only difference between this guy and the modern guy is this guy is twice as big. And we know it's platypus because of the teeth. And you see that groove in the jawbone? Right around the front, on the left there? That's for the giant nerve that platypuses have that runs out to the end of their bill. Because they detect electricity with their bill. They need a big nerve for that. It's right there in the jawbone. The guy in the middle, he looks like a badger. He's got a big famous name, Repenomamus robustus. He looks like a badger. Can't be a badger though, right? Because badgers are modern mammals. And in his belly was a baby Psittacosaurus. So in the morning of Noah's flood, this guy had a dinosaur for breakfast. There's a beaver-like creature there. Now, I'd say beaver-like because it's not really a beaver, but he's very similar to a beaver, and he was preserved with his hairs. So yeah, hairs can be preserved in the fossil record. Okay, now, I don't know if you can see the dates here. Now, MA, in evolutionary lingo, that means mega-annum, or millions of years ago. Now, we were told the dinosaurs died out 65 million years ago, right? Big meteor hit the earth, killed off all the dinosaurs. 65 MA, that's the evolutionary number. I don't for 1 second believe the earth is that old, but fine. Let's just use the evolutionary number. 65 million years ago, that beaver-like thing was living with dinosaurs 100 million years before they went extinct. That's before most of the dinosaurs supposedly evolved. Oh, that is not what I was taught in graduate school, by the way. This is new information. This guy on the right, last summer, Nature magazine, looks like a hedgehog. He's the size of a hedgehog, he's the shape of a hedgehog, and hedgehogs, you've seen hedgehogs, right? They have very strange looking hairs. They're very distinctive. There's only one species in the world that has hairs like that. Yeah, that fossil had hairs like that. And his heart was preserved. And you see where his diaphragm is. But look at this guy. That is a mammal. It is not a primitive mammal. It is not a transitional mammal. It is a definitive mammal. He's got mammal teeth. He's got a long mammal tail. He's got mammal arms and legs. There's nothing in there transitional. And yet they found this thing in rocks that they dated way before the dinosaurs. In fact, those blobs there, that's that tree I showed you with all the dinosaurs and the 50 family sticks. All I did was draw red lines on those sticks, and I shoved them off to the left. That's evolutionary time. There's your Cretaceous, your Jurassic, your Triassic, going back 65, 145, 200 million years ago. Now, I remember in college being told that mammals didn't evolve until the end of the dinosaur era. And then after the dinosaurs died out, that's when wallabies and gazelles evolved. And I was told that birds didn't live until at the end of the dinosaur era. And after the dinosaurs were killed off, that's when birds turned into things like sandpipers and ostriches and eagles. Remember hearing stuff like that? But yeah, that's not true anymore. Watch this. That mammal that I just showed you was found in Triassic rocks and is not transitional. Where are the transitions? In fact, if we looked at where all the mammals are found, they are found... Oh, what happened? Oh, well, go back one, please. I don't know why that skipped over my awesome animation. Try that, and then one more. Okay, one more. All right. Point was, mammals are found throughout the entire fossil record of dinosaurs. What about birds? Here's Confuciusaurus. Lived 55, 60 million years, supposedly, before the dinosaurs went extinct. That's a bird. Notice the feathers. Yes, feathers can be preserved in rocks. And we have multiple specimens of Confuciusaurus. Now, he's got a beak. He's got feathers on his tail. Now, birds don't have long, bony tails like your Labrador Retriever when he's happy and whacks with his tail. Oh, it hurts. No, birds don't have that. They just got a little... You've eaten chicken? What's on the rear end of a chicken? This little teeny thing, right? It's called a pygostyle, and if he's got a tail, it's just feathers sticking off it. Reptiles have a long, bony tail. This guy has got a bird bottom. And yet, he's supposedly millions of years before the dinosaurs supposedly died out. Notice he's got a claw on his wing. A lot of ancient birds have wing claws, but you know what's funny? Is that one modern bird has wing claws. The Hoatzin of South America is called a stink bird. Baby Hoatzins use their claws to climb all over trees. They're very functional. It's not some vestigial organ. They're really useful. Now, the weird thing about the Hoatzin, you've eaten chicken and turkey, right? When you get the white meat off the bone, you got to dig it out from here, right? There's a thing on the sternum, it's called a keel. And now, chickens don't fly very well. Most birds have a keel that makes a triangle that gives the bird mechanical advantage. It helps them fly. Neat design. The Hoatzin can fly just fine, but they don't have that keel. They got a flat breastbone, just like Archaeopteryx did. And wing claws, just like Archaeopteryx did. But they don't have teeth like Archaeopteryx. They don't have a tail like Archaeopteryx. But this is really strange, because this guy is still alive today. And oh yes, birds in the fossil record. This is a bird. It's going to be hard to see, but follow my description here. Pointing up to the top is a little triangle. That's the beak of the bird. That brown smile on the bottom, that's the color of the end of his tail feathers. Wow, that's neat. Not just feather impressions, but the color was preserved. This is Hangshanornis. Notice it's got a very Chinese name because most of these feathered birds are found in China, one province of China. And this is tricky. Scientifically, this is very awkward. Because if you're only finding these things in one place in the world, and it's really one village where the paleontologists come and hire them to do all the fossil collecting and stuff, this is an area that's ripe for fake and forgeries. In about 15 years, this is in the 90s, the late 90s, National Geographic got caught bad. They had spent a couple of $1 million on a forgery that came from the same place that these fossils are coming from. Someone had taken a bird fossil and a lizard fossil, broken one, and glued them together. And so a lot of paleontologists are like, no, this can't be true. This is too good to be true. I don't believe it. So some guy went to the quarry, and he found the other half of the fossil. And lo and behold, they didn't match. So we have to be careful. But when we find things like this, we know it's not a forgery. This is a rock. They split it in half. That's a left and right hand form of the same fossil. Anchiornis huxleyi. Huxley was a good friend of Charles Darwin, interestingly. But no, this is 100 million years before the dinosaurs supposedly went extinct, and it's a bird. He's got a beak. He's got feathers on his tail. It's a bird. This is really curious. Because if birds evolved from dinosaurs... Oh, this is what I was trying to do. Let me do back up. This is what I was expecting to say. Sorry, pardon me. If birds evolved from dinosaurs, the question is, when? Because the paleontologists might have run out of time. Wow. I got my doctorate in 2003. None of the information I just presented you was known then. Science changes fast. We've got to be careful. fact, one of these groups that left about the same level of birds, that's the one that supposedly evolved into birds. And the reason I have a question mark after the word bird is because we keep finding more. Now, aren't a lot of bird fossils. Birds don't petrify very well. They don't fossilize very well, but we do find them, and when we do, we have pushed their origin way back in time. Now, paleontologists are going to have to say to you, yes, mammals live with dinosaurs. In fact, as many mammal species are found in dinosaur-era rocks as dinosaur species. And birds live with dinosaurs. That's funny, because I always believed that was true. Science has finally caught up. All right, I'm going to answer this question. Do dinosaurs have feathers? I'm going to tell you something. I don't care. If they have feathers, fine. If they don't have feathers, fine. Does the Bible say dinosaurs did not have feathers? No. So it's neutral for me. I don't care either way. Now, I don't think there's a lot of good information that suggests dinosaurs have feathers. I think the evolutionists is really, really trying to push it. This is the poster child of the feathered dinosaur, Sinosauropteryx. Notice that brown line down his back? If you look up close, it's really fuzzy looking. They said, oh, these are the proto-feathers. Except about 2 years ago, and this has been around for 10 or 15 years now, about 2 years ago, a paleontologist did another paper on this, the same fossil, and they said, wow, that's amazing, because that fuzz is underneath the animal's skin. And it is obvious to anyone who looks. That's a direct quote from the paper. Obvious to anyone who looks. How come it wasn't obvious to the first people who studied the fossil? Because they really wanted to find evidence of feathered dinosaurs. Do not trust scientists. We are people. We can be biased, we can be bigoted, we can be searching for research grants. We're not always truthful because we are people. All people are susceptible to the same errors. Be careful. Now, did dinosaurs have feathers? The bottom picture, that is a turkey vulture wing without the skin. That's really cool. The third one down, it looks like a flute. You see the bumps on the bone? You know what those are? They're called quill knobs. When birds are actively flying, birds, they stick their feathers up when they make a turn or they come in for a landing. Just like an airplane does. They change the shape of the wing when they come for landing. Birds do that too. But in order to change the shape of their wings, they have little muscles connected to their feathers, and they pull the feather. And as it pulls and pulls and pulls, it leaves a little knob on the bone. It's called a quill knob. It's an example of, it's evidence of a bird who actively flies. Ostriches don't have quill knobs. Penguins don't have quill knobs. Albatrosses, interestingly, don't have quill knobs. Now, they fly, but they have a really hard time landing and a really hard time taking off. But once they get on the wing, they will sleep while they fly, one eye at a time. And they can fly for days, if not weeks. In fact, one of the European species, they are trying to figure out, they knew that they flew to Africa. They're trying to figure out where they nested in Africa. Turns out they don't. They fly for 6 months. And then they come home and sleep. But those birds would have quill knobs because they're very active. Albatrosses don't. So quill knobs are diagnostic of an animal who actually has this active flight mode. Do you think that velociraptors could fly? No, no one believes velociraptors could fly. So even if velociraptors had feathers, they wouldn't leave quill knobs behind. And yet these upper two pictures, that is the lower arm blade of a velociraptor. And in fact, there are little teeny white arrows on that gray, looks like a boomerang shape. And looking at the paper, I got on my PDF, I zoomed up on it, I'm looking at these little teeny bumps that they're calling quill knobs. Maybe they were quill knobs, maybe they weren't, but I am really not convinced. So look, I'm a scientist. I'm a skeptical scientist. I don't believe everything I read. And if someone could prove to me that dinosaurs have feathers, I would accept that, fine. It's just, as of today, I am unconvinced. Fair enough? But what if I was to show you that none of this matters? All of this is irrelevant. The reason that so many paleontologists want dinosaurs to have feathers is because they're trying to prove that birds evolved from dinosaurs. What if I could show you that dinosaur fossils can't be millions of years old? If dinosaur fossils are not millions of years old, there's no time for evolution. Watch this. Oh, I started up there. This is, electron microscope pictures from the inside of a Triceratops horn. Those upper two pictures, those very delicate bone things, they turn to powder over time. The middle on the right, those blobs with the spikes, those are osteoblasts. Those are bone cells. Those are intact cells in a bone that was supposedly buried 70 million years ago. Scientifically, I have a great problem with this. Because I can't leave a ham sandwich on the counter for a week before it starts turning green. Could I take like a ham leg and bury it in my backyard for 20 years and expect to find anything left? How about 4,500 years? It's approximately the time since Noah's flood. I am incredulous. I do not expect anything to be left in biological materials after 4,000 years of decomposition. And it's a trade secret. This is from the Hell Creek Formation of Montana. All the bones smell like they're dead. As if they're still rotting. And even if they have some permineralization on the outside, the inside of a lot of large bones is not petrified. You ever see the mummy? Right? What happened when they open up sarcophagus and it's all kind of wet? And it's like, oh, it's still gooey. You know? Why were they surprised it was still gooey? Because after that much time, there shouldn't be any water left in this thing, right? Of course, you know what happens after that. Sorry. All of you who haven't seen that or don't watch movies like that. Push that aside. You know, okay, fine. Just roll with me. This is the same thing. It's a shock. It shouldn't be true. This is even worse. That is material from the inside of a Tyrannosaurus rex leg bone. Not fossilized, still stretchy. These are cells from inside dinosaur bones. Now, they said, we got cells, let's see if there's DNA in there. And they did something I do in the genetics lab. There's a specific stain that I used a lot to see if there's DNA in a sample, and that's the two things on the left. Those two little green dots not only lit up DNA, but lit up what looks like the nucleus inside the cell. But bacteria have DNA, right? We know bacteria live in these non-fossilized bones in the ground. So they said, we know people are going to jump on us, so they did another test. And on the right, those two red dots, they stained it for a protein that bacteria do not have. But dinosaurs would have had it. You had it. It's called a histone. It's a protein that your DNA wraps around inside your nucleus. This is evolutionists doing this. This is not creationists. And the people who did this, again, all this, people hated them. People wrote them hate mail. This can't be true. You're lying, blah, 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 blah. So they kept on just doing their experiments more and more and more until finally the evolutionary community very grudgingly has come over to say, okay, yes, this is true. There's lots of soft tissues left in dinosaur bones from multiple species and multiple formations all around the world. That's not supposed to be true. But science changes. This is a false color image of some collagen from the inside of a velociraptor claw that was sitting on a museum shelf in England for 100 years. They scraped away the surface, they took a picture. Wow. You know what collagen is? This is collagen. This stuff breaks down. Bacteria eat it. Cosmic rays disintegrate it. Heat makes it break down, and yet it's still there. This is brand new. This looks like a mummified dinosaur. It's a Psittacosaurus. And based on the coloration, they drew the picture of the way they think the animal was colored. He's counter-shaded. He's the color of dead leaves. He would be really hard to see in a forest. Wow, that's really amazing. Color of a dinosaur? Yeah, right there from its own fossil. But notice, by the way, that the entire animal was buried in one piece. So, I just skipped over about half of my dinosaur talk because I wanted to get by the time I'm done, about 15 minutes to ask, you can ask me questions. If you had heard the whole thing, you would have been able to put together this bullet point I'm about to give to you. Now, if you want to learn more about one of these, go to creation.com, go to the Q&A section, just click on dinosaurs. It's like 100 articles or more on dinosaurs. All of what I'm about to say, you can actually do yourself. First, dinosaurs tell us about God's creativity. You saw the picture of the ceratopsids in the first slide I showed you, or maybe second slide. Beautiful creativity within different groups of species. We saw a lot of other examples also. Tells us, whoa, wait a minute. What happened to all my food? Okay, it looks like even though we imported my PowerPoint onto your wonderful system, a couple of things didn't work. So I'm going to skip over that last slide. What am I going to say? Because everything I was going to say, all my jokes now are gone. Oh, I don't know. Let's just end up with this. If you want more information, go to creation.com. Tons of information. If you want to get a book on a subject, here's a couple I would recommend. One of them is that book that was up there a second ago. So I'm talking with my hands, and so therefore I'm confusing them. This is the signal, by the way. Next slide. There we go. Perfect. You're awesome. This book is fantastic. Dire Dragons, Untold Secrets of Planet Earth. The author went all over the world taking pictures of dragons. In artwork, carvings, pottery, tapestries. And he said, this is really cool because there's a lot of pictures of dragons. And then he had an artist draw a picture of a known species of dinosaur in the same pose as shown in the artwork. And it is uncanny how similar the two things are. Very interesting book. And there's also another book next to it, a new book. It's a newer book, Untold Secrets of Planet Earth, Flood Fossils. I had the pleasure of reviewing that for Steve. As soon as I saw it on my boss's deck, I said, I'm going to do the review for this book, because I knew the first book and how good it was. And I learned so much stuff about fossils in that book I didn't know. For instance, we have all these examples of fossilized trees, right? And many of them are oval, not round. So they were lying flat and they were crushed, which means they were buried under tremendous weight and put under a tremendous amount of pressure and fossilized while the pressure was still on. That is really interesting. A lot of implications for Noah's flood. Here's a little kid's book, middle school probably, Exploring Geology with Mr. Hibb. The purpose of the book is to answer kids' questions about fossils, dinosaurs, Noah's flood, natural questions that even many of you might have. They use a little cricket character to walk the child through obvious questions and biblical answers. That's a really interesting book. Here's a book, Dragons in the Deep. Not dinosaurs, but dragons, because, by definition, sorry, I keep tying myself. By definition, dinosaurs have legs. Whether 2 legs or 4, they stand up on their legs. But the big reptiles that lived in the water had flippers, and their flippers stuck out to the side. So your mosasaurs and all the other kind of saurs that lived in the water. So we just call them dragons of the deep. Fascinating book. These animals are unbelievably amazing. If you want to learn more about that group, that's a very interesting resource. Here's a DVD called Dragons or Dinosaurs. And this is funny because my boss said, hey Rob, congratulations, you're going to be in a documentary. I said, really? What's it about? He goes, Dragons or Dinosaurs? And I said, no. He goes, what do you mean? They're coming next week. You're going to be on TV, man. What are you worried about? Why'd you say no? I said, because too many people said too many hokey things about dragons and dinosaurs in biblical history. It makes me really uncomfortable. I'm a scientist. I don't like some of the stuff these people say. So he said, do the best you can. All right, so they sat me down, and I said, can't be this, can't be that, you shouldn't say that, that's a mistake, this is the way you're supposed to phrase it, and I didn't know that's what they were looking for, so I've got more face time than the other 14 interviewees. I can highly recommend this. Very interesting documentary. Next, this might be my last one. Okay, I'm going to leave you with 1 Peter 3:15. I'm going to use this in all of my talks. But in your hearts, honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you, including when they throw questions about dinosaurs and evolution and time in your face. How do you answer those questions? And you do it with gentleness and respect. And I tell you what, the gentleness and respect part is the most important part. Because if you're trying to witness to someone by yelling at them, they're going to call you an idiot and they're going to walk away. But if you can give a dispassionate, professional, intelligent response, that is a very powerful way to argue. In fact, you don't even have to know the answer. You can say, you know what, I have absolutely no idea what the answer to that question is. Might as well admit it. But I'm going to go look it up on creation.com, and I'm going to come back tomorrow, and we're going to keep on talking. You know why it's powerful? Because they don't expect you to come back. All right. I promise you, we're not going to cut into between the two services, because, we've got stuff we got to do in between. And I'm going to stop it. Is that an hour ahead now, or is that the... We're going to stop at quarter till, whatever hour it is. Okay, quarter till. I'm going to open up the floor for questions. But we have to have some rules. First of all, it has to be a question. There's a question mark, right? Please, no statements, no stories, nothing you heard in a dream. You wouldn't believe what one might hear from up here when one opens up the floor. Also, if you ask me a question that typically divides Christians, I'm not going to answer it. So if you ask me a question about free will versus predestination, Bible translations, men versus women, I'm saying, great, that's next Sunday's sermon, come back. I'm not going to dare to contradict something that might be preached from me. I probably believe almost everything, but I'm not going to go into any of those subjects. If you ask me a question about science, fair game, but what I'm going to try to do is give you a short answer and point you to a resource that can answer it more fully. All right? Who's first? Okay, ladies first.
Where is the greatest concentration of dinosaur remains being found?
Great question. Where is the greatest concentration of dinosaur remains been found on Earth? The western U.S. is one of the greatest. The Gobi Desert is the second. Interestingly, if you look at dinosaur fossils, dinosaur footprints, dinosaur eggs in the continental U.S., they're found in a band parallel east and parallel to the Rocky Mountains. They call it Dinosaur Ridge. It sticks down from Canada. It doesn't even get all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. That's where most of them are found. So we have pockets of dinosaurs around the world in different places, different species. They found some in Madagascar recently. They're not petrified. The bones are like bleached cow bones. They're in sand. You can pick them up, you're like, it's not even a rock. So I believe the greatest concentration is in the U.S. I'm not certain of that. But they're in places. They're not scattered everywhere. So, excellent question. Sir?
What is your professional viewpoint of the accuracy of carbon dating?
My professional viewpoint on the accuracy of carbon dating. Excellent question. Carbon dating is incredibly accurate. But I'm going to turn the question around. You said carbon dating. I think you meant radiometric dating. There are hundreds of radiometric dating techniques. Carbon dating is only one of them. Most people say carbon dating, they mean uranium to lead. That's not carbon. That's the uranium to lead thing. There's potassium to argon is another very common one. So the whole ball of wax called radiometric dating, each one of the various tests we have a different answer for. But carbon dating is my favorite. Because see, this carbon-14 in this piece of wood right here, this carbon-14 in your body. And when you die, or when this tree died to make this podium, this tree, your future body, will not be exchanging carbon with the atmosphere anymore. Therefore, you won't be absorbing carbon dioxide from the environment. And about 1 out of every billion carbon dioxide atoms is radioactive. That's carbon-14 in it. So 1 out of a billion carbon in this thing here, you can take a piece of this and bring it to the carbon lab, and they will tell you this is post-1945. No doubt about it, because 1945 is when they started exploding atomic bombs in the atmosphere, and it messed up all the carbon clocks. So we know post-1945 instantly. Before 1945, they can give you plus or minus 10, 20, 50, 100 years. For instance, there's a big debate on the colonial impact on Native Americans. And one of the big debates was, did the venereal disease syphilis start in Native America or start in Europe? In other words, was it conquering evil Europeans that gave it to the nice natives, or did the natives give it to the Europeans? And so in order to settle it, they found the earliest people who obviously died of syphilis in Europe. Syphilis, it eats your bones. It's a horrible disease, and you can tell from bones if the person died of syphilis. Very clear. They found these in Portugal, and they carbon dated them before 1492. Aha! It was in Europe, and Europeans sent it to the New World. And then that story got retracted because some other scientists came and said, you can't do that. You have to calibrate your date. See, these people lived in Portugal in a fishing village. They ate lots of fish and shellfish. And there's less carbon-14 in the ocean than on land. Therefore, if you have a diet rich in shellfish, you have less carbon-14, and you're going to appear older than you really are. So they recalibrated it, and it was post-1492. So that's science. That's how it works, and it's amazing, and it's fun. Plus or minus a couple hundred years is common for that date. So therefore, when you look at dinosaur bones, there shouldn't be any carbon-14 in them, because it breaks down too rapidly. I mean, if the whole Earth was carbon-14, it would disintegrate in less than 1 million years and nothing left. So nothing millions of years old can have carbon-14. This water bottle has carbon-14. Dinosaur bones have carbon-14. Amber, coal, oil, natural gas, diamonds. Every carbon source we've ever looked at has carbon-14. And because we know it's pretty accurate, that tells us that no carbon in the world can be millions of years old. All right, that's a long answer for a simple question. So, my professional opinion on its accuracy, it depends on which test you're talking about. And I turned around to carbon-14 because that's my favorite argument, because thank you, Mr. Evolutionist, for inventing carbon-14. Appreciate it. It's mine. Go play with something else. All right, who's next? Sir.
How old do you think the Earth is?
How old do I think the Earth is? Well, first of all, scientifically, you cannot actually assess it one way or the other. There's nothing on there that says, I'm this old. Didn't come with a date. Scientifically testing, most of the ways to gauge the age of the Earth point to the Earth being very young. Almost all of them. Now, some of them, radiometric dating, are used to show it's old, or to try to show that it's old. Most of the tests say it's young, as in how much salt is in the ocean, how large are river deltas. I mean, just the amount coming off the Mississippi River, that's enough to raise all of North America down to sea level in 10 million years. So it can't be more than millions of years, or we wouldn't have continents anymore. So there's lots and lots and lots of different ways to do it. How would you actually put a number on it, though? If you go to creation.com, by the way, creation.com, radiometric dating, lots of articles. Go to creation.com, type in age of the Earth, and my article should come up. It's called The Biblical Minimum and Maximum Age of the Earth. And a co-author and I, we went through the Bible, we poured through it, we've tried to find every single statement that has to do with the age of the Earth. And we said, okay, how much wiggle room is in that statement? Example, Noah was 130 years, no, Adam, the Bible says, was 130 years old when Seth was born. Was he on his birthday? Was it the day before his 131st birthday? Who knows? That's plus or minus 6 months. So every time the Bible says this guy was so old when that child was born, it's plus or minus 6 months. And the age of the Earth goes. So we added up all those gray areas, we got plus or minus about 300 and something years. So the Earth is about 6,200 years old, plus or minus about 300 years, according to the Scriptures. Scientifically, I can't measure it. I have a lot of evidence that it's young, but I can't actually know because you can't put a number on a lot of those tests. All right? Now, I'm sure I made some people uncomfortable with that one. Go to creation.com, type in age of the Earth, read for yourself. And then, after we get a grasp of what the Bible says, look at all the scientific indicators about the age of the Earth. That's a really good question. Another indication is the distance of the moon. The moon is receding from the Earth. If you bring the moon too close to the Earth, the gravitational pull of the Earth will rip the moon apart. It's called the Roche limit. And based on its recession rate, the moon could not be here for hundreds of millions of years because it would have to start inside that Roche limit. It has to be a young Earth-Moon system or else it can't exist. So lots and lots and lots of things like that. Sir?
I was looking at the scripture in 1 Peter, and I want to ask, it's real fascinating how do you relate science or the dinosaur with scripture? You know, the generations and patterns. You know, when I look at that, I relate that to the human being.
Okay, what is exactly the question?
The question is you relate that to dinosaurs. They on Earth to tell us something, and something they trying to say us spiritually.
Okay, I'm not exactly certain what you're getting at, but let me try to
Well,
take a stab at it.
You relate what you said to dinosaur with gentleness and respect.
Yes.
And so,
I believe dinosaurs can fit into Earth history. Even if, now the only place in the Bible where I think it might be talking about a dinosaur is Job chapter 40, where it's talking about a behemoth, which is a plant-eating, massive animal with very strong bones and a very long tail. And that sounds very much like a sauropod dinosaur. It doesn't say this is a sauropod, but it sounds like a sauropod dinosaur. Other places in Scripture, most animals in the world the Bible does not talk about, because the Bible is not a taxonomy book. It's not a scientific handbook for all knowledge. It's a history of the bride of Christ. The whole point of the Bible is to bring about Jesus Christ and Jesus Christ dying for people, for his bride.
so that's my point. I'm trying to see if because of dinosaur and what Scripture is saying about it, in what way does it relate to us?
Oh, in what way? Okay, okay.
As far as
Spiritually.
righteousness.
We can look at dinosaurs and we can say, wow, God is a creative genius. We can say that God is also a judge. We can say that this world fell into sin and suffering, and we can use dinosaurs as examples. Because lots of crunched up fighting and broken bones and stuff in dinosaur fossils. We can look at that and just determine that God is also a merciful God. Even though he's a judge, he's also merciful, because it looks like he preserved dinosaurs till after the flood. Which means they must have been on Noah's Ark. Which means that yeah, they're extinct now, but so was the great auk and so was the dodo bird. I mean, God didn't promise that every single species would survive, even though generally he did preserve species through the flood, and it looks like he did. So actually, there's a parallel here to the gospel account. Because if God is a creator, and if the world fell into sin, and God still forgives people, this is really good news. And, sorry, if God preserved dinosaurs through the thing, not forgives people, but if God preserved dinosaurs through the judgment, which was the flood, then this is a very gospel-sounding story. And we can turn that around and say, look, you are a sinner. Sorry, I'm not picking on you. But you person I'm talking to, you are a sinner. God created you free from that. We got corrupted. We need redemption. The judgment of God is coming. And he who puts their faith in Jesus Christ will come through that judgment to the other side. I'm going to spend the next hour talking about that. Okay, we're done. If you've got more questions afterwards, come and see me over here. Like, you've got 15 minutes now, and then after the next service, I'll stay here until we're done. After this evening's lecture, man, I don't know how long we'll stay answering questions, but all right. Would you like to come and close the Sunday school hour? Thank you.